The amount of money for childcare is going up for families who are on universal credit. Under plans first announced in the budget, parents can claim back £951 for one child, £1,630 for two. They'll also be able to claim 85% of the costs back before their next childcare bills are due. Let's talk now to Christine Farquharson, who's economist at the Institute for Fiscal Studies, focusing on early years. Good morning.
Good morning.
So in terms of the context for this, what is it actually going to mean for people at home waiting for payments?
So the government has proposed two distinct reforms for universal credit families on low incomes who are in work to give them support with those childcare costs. The first of those, raising the caps, reverses an 18-year cash terms freeze in the level of those caps, or the maximum amount of support you can get. But quite interestingly, even so, the current caps as they are now aren't particularly binding for most families receiving this support. The average claimant gets about £330 a month, about half the value of the existing cap for one child. So while a minority of families could benefit quite a bit from seeing these caps increased, actually for most low-income working families with young children on universal credit, these changes are really something that's happening on paper rather than something that's really affecting their lives.
Because they're never going to claim those amounts of money. They claim a lower amount. So what do you think it'll make a difference it'll make in terms of the numbers of family? You said it was a minority.
We think it's about 10 in the sort of low tens of thousands of families who will be benefiting from these caps increasing. Now, that is, in absolute terms, quite a lot of people who will feel some gain. But you have to set that against the fact that around 800,000 families are eligible for support through this program. So the caps themselves are a little bit less consequential. The changing of the timing of the payments that you mentioned, that's something that could be quite a bit more impactful.
Why is that important?
That's because families at the moment have to pay for their first month of childcare out of pocket. And so if you look at the average claimant on universal credit with a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old moving into work for the first time, we estimate that their disposable income falls by about a third in that first month of working because they're on the hook for childcare expenses, they haven't necessarily seen their first paycheck, and they're waiting for that first month for the government to come back and give them that 85% subsidy.
Now, a lot of people in this area say that what really needs to happen, what would make a big difference, is to reduce the costs and increase the workforce in the sector. The government's announcing a consultation. What is the problem here?
So workforce is the number one problem that a lot of childcare providers want to talk about these days. They're struggling to recruit staff, they're struggling to retain staff, and they're struggling to make sure that the people working in the sector are delivering the highest possible quality of care. The government's consultation today brings together a lot of different measures, including some pretty small things, technical wording changes, some bigger proposals around relaxing the qualification requirements in some settings. But really, the fundamental issue here is one of pay and of esteem. When we've seen supermarkets like Lidl putting up their wages by quite a lot in the last few weeks, that makes it ever harder for childcare sectors to compete and really pay a competitive wage that's going to attract and keep their workers.
The government says it's investing £3.5 billion over 5 years to boost workforce participation. Do you think that goes far enough?
The measures that we've seen in the budget, these childcare measures we've been speaking about today, not just for universal credit, but also offering free childcare eventually to all families with a 9-month plus who are in work. Those are going to move the dial on labour supply. The OBR estimates that we'll get an extra several tens of thousands of mothers into work on the back of those. Whether that's going to be enough to really reshape the economy is a different question. We know that most of the support, particularly for those free hours, will help families who are already in work and already paying for childcare.
Christine Farquharson from the Institute for Fiscal Studies, many thanks.